Hello, my name is Marie Alcock, and I'm president of Learning Systems Associates. And I've been a teacher for about 20 years, and I started off in middle school and worked through high school in a year-round school. And in that time, I've really gotten to be passionate about curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And when you're passionate about those kinds of things, you can't help but start talking about assessments. And when you start talking about assessments, you can't help but talk about testing. And so what I'd like to focus on today is what's going on with testing. So I had the wonderful opportunity of going to China back in 2006 with a team, and we had an awful lot of questions back then about how do you do a better job on standardized testing, and how do you improve student performance. And I was traveling with a friend of mine, Shudong Huang, and Shudong Huang and I were trapped on an airplane for several hours, and in that time I was kind of anti-testing. I had a lot of issues with testing and how much testing there was and how invalid and questionable testing was for students. I just didn't believe in it at all. And Shudong was able to teach me a little bit about what's the point with testing? Why do we use it? Because an awful lot of effort is put into making sure that standardized tests are effective at what they do and to make them reliable, to make them valid. And what I was humbled about was that it's not that the standardized test is so bad. What is so bad is how we are using the information from a standardized test. And so when I realized that it was really the abuse of the data, it was the malpractice that our society, parents, administrators, newspapers, publishing results, all those things that we're doing with the standardized test has now maligned and ruined the process. And so an analogy that I've come up with, that I work with, is a medical analogy. And it comes from going to the doctor, and whenever I went to the doctor on a regular basis, the first thing that would happen is the doctor would take my temperature, my vitals, right? So my temperature, my blood pressure, and maybe my height and weight. And when a doctor's doing that, they're doing it because that data correlates strongly with other things. So if I have an elevated fever, I might have an infection, or I might have a tumor. And when a doctor sees that kind of data, they're going to do more tests or try and get more information. So maybe they would suggest an MRI. But if I go into a doctor's office and they say, well, temperature is such an easy piece of data to get, and it correlates strongly with, let's say, tumors, you have an elevated temperature, and I'm concerned. But getting an MRI is difficult to do. It takes more time, takes more money. So what we're going to do is we're just going to see that elevated temperature and start chemo on Thursday. Well, that's malpractice. That is a doctor I'm not going to go to. Standardized test data is an easy piece of data to get. It's very easy. It's kind of like taking a temperature. And it does actually correlate with some of these other things that I'd be worried about or concerned about in the field of education. But for me to take standardized test data and then just use it to make a diagnosis and a prescription and say, you know what, you had not such a great score on making decisions, so teach it more, teach it better. I have not been able to substantiate or refute that those were the things that were impacting that score. I need more information. So for me to rank students on standardized tests, for me to evaluate teachers on standardized test results, for me to evaluate schools on standardized test results is just like a doctor taking a temperature and then making a prescription for chemotherapy. In the same breath, I would not go to a doctor who says, you know what, I disrespect the way we're using taking a temperature, so I'm never going to take a temperature again. I think we should just get rid of taking temperatures. Down with temperatures. Well, that's not going to be effective either. I need to take a temperature. So standardized tests and testing should happen, and we should take them. but not as often as we are. Not using the data the way we are. High stakes testing events with the kind of pressure and impact on curriculum decisions and teaching decisions. This is when good teachers make bad decisions about what to do because of this perceived culture of threat that has now come out of standardized testing. All of that is a result of us abusing the data. So my suggestion, go ahead and take a standardized test, but don't let it be more than it was ever designed to be. Don't abuse the data. Use it responsibly, correctly, and it will actually positively impact student achievement.